Get lost. You people don't belong here. That's what the flight attendant screamed across gate C7, loud enough for everyone to hear. Two identical little girls, both dressed in matching sunflower hoodies and bright pink backpacks, froze in shock. Their chocolate brown faces crumpled, not from fear, but from confusion. One of them dropped her juice pouch. It hit the ground with a splat, spraying her white sneakers with red fruit punch. The other clutched her small teddy bear tighter. Everyone turned to look. A silence fell over the terminal. A silence full of eyes. Eyes that watched, judged, whispered, but nobody said a word in their defense. Not even the gate agent who stood right there. The woman who yelled looked proud. Proud of herself for making the two little black girls cry. What nobody knew, not the angry flight attendant, not the gate agent, not even the other passengers, was that these girls had someone powerful on speed dial. Their dad was the CEO of the entire airline, and he was just one phone call away. Call Daddy, whispered Ava, tears still streaming down her face. Her twin, Alani, already had her little phone out. Her fingers moved fast. Tap, tap, call. The phone rang once, twice. He picked up, and just 5 minutes later, the entire airport shut down. Gates were closed. Flights were delayed. Airplanes that were ready for takeoff were forced to return to the terminal. Nobody understood why, but everyone was about to find out. The moment the intercom buzzed to life with a trembling voice, the entire story began to unravel. Now, let's go back to the beginning. The twins, Ava and Alani, had just turned 8 years old the week before. Their dad, Mr. Jonathan Green, ran one of the biggest airline companies in the country, Jet Sky International. He worked hard, traveled a lot, and rarely ever got a break. But he always made time for his daughters. They were his everything. That Saturday morning, the girls were supposed to fly alone for the first time. A short trip from Atlanta to Chicago to visit their grandma, who had promised them pancakes with whipped cream and a trip to the zoo. Their dad made sure everything was perfect. He personally booked their flight. Not through an assistant. Not through a travel agent. He did it himself. He even called the airline staff ahead of time, letting them know his daughters would be traveling as unaccompanied minors. He told them, they're twins. Ava and Alani. Bright smiles. Bright minds. Please take good care of them. He arranged for a company escort, someone whose job it was to walk the girls from check-in all the way to the gate. She was a kind older lady named Miss Denise, who smelled like vanilla and always wore flower pins on her sweater. Miss Denise had worked for the company for 30 years. She loved kids, especially twins. She took them by the hand that morning, checking their names off the list, double-checking their bags, and making sure they had everything. Got your snacks? She asked. Yes, ma'am, the twins said together. Stuffed animal? Check. Charged phone. Charged and ready. She walked them to the gate, sat them down, and reminded them not to go anywhere. Stay right here until the plane is ready, she said. I'll be right back. I'm just grabbing a boarding pass printout for the pilot. But 5 minutes after she walked away, everything changed. A new staff member had come on shift. A young flight attendant, blonde and sharp-nosed, with a tight ponytail and a tighter smile. She glanced over and saw the girls sitting alone. She walked right up to them, crossed her arms, and said, "You girls need to move." Ava blinked. Why? This isn't a daycare. Go wait with your parents. Alani shook her head. Our dad's not here. Miss Denise told us to wait. The woman narrowed her eyes. I don't know who that is. But you can't be here. And don't lie to me. We're not lying, said Ava, her voice shaking. Yes, you are. Go. Get lost. Now. The words stung like fire. And just like that, the twins were made to feel like they didn't belong. Like they weren't welcome in a space their father practically owned. Tears welled up. People saw. Nobody stepped in. They were little. They were black. And they were alone. Until Ava remembered what their dad told them. If anything ever feels wrong, call me. And they did. When their dad picked up, he didn't shout. He didn't scream. He just said, stay where you are. Don't move. I'm handling it. And within minutes, everything spiraled. Unmarked security appeared at the terminal. Whispers spread like wildfire. Crew members were pulled aside. Phones started ringing nonstop. The woman who shouted at the girls suddenly looked confused. Then scared. Then furious. But it was too late. One man in a dark blue suit stepped forward and whispered something into the gate agent's ear. She turned white. And then, the airport speaker crackled to life. Attention passengers at gate C7. Every head turned toward the speaker. The twins held hands tightly. The woman who told them to leave clutched her radio. The announcement continued. All flights at gate C7 are now suspended until further notice. Please remain in your current location. Do not approach the gate staff. Gasps. Voices. Confusion. The angry flight attendant took a step back. What's going on? She asked. But no one answered. No one except the twins, whose phone buzzed with a new message from their dad. Sit tight, girls. They're going to apologize. Ava showed the screen to Alani. They didn't understand everything that was happening, but they knew one thing. Something big was coming. And then, the woman who had yelled at them began to walk back over. Not with pride this time, but with her hands shaking, her lips pressed into a tight, trembling line. She knelt down. She opened her mouth to speak. But before she could say a single word, the doors to gate C7 burst open, and someone unexpected stepped inside. That was when everything changed again. Gasps echoed across the terminal as every head turned toward the doors of gate C7. Two suited security guards stepped aside. In walked a tall man in a charcoal gray suit, polished shoes clicking loudly on the tile. His tie was still loosened, as if he had left a meeting mid-sentence. His expression was calm, but his eyes were fire. It was Jonathan Green, the CEO. He didn't shout. He didn't run. He simply walked, with the quiet power of a man who didn't need to prove anything. The woman who had screamed at the twins stood up quickly, wiping her palms on her uniform. Her lips parted like she wanted to say something, but no words came out. Jonathan didn't look at her. He walked past her like she wasn't even there, straight to his daughters. He knelt beside them, gently touching their cheeks. Are you okay? He asked. Ava nodded. She was really mean, Daddy. Alani added. She told us to get lost. Jonathan took a slow breath. I know. I'm here now. The terminal was so quiet you could hear the faint buzz of the soda machine across the hall. Everyone was watching. Phones were recording. Still not raising his voice, Jonathan stood up and turned to face the crowd. Then, finally, he turned to the woman who had yelled at his daughters. What's your name? He asked. Her mouth opened, then closed. Sharon. Sharon Moore. Are you the one who told my daughters to get lost? Sharon's voice cracked. I didn't know who they were. That's not what I asked. Her face turned red. Yes, she said finally. I said that. And you didn't think to ask why they were there? Or if they needed help? I thought they were unattended. They were being escorted. My company's own unaccompanied minor program. You didn't think they belonged here, did you? Sharon looked around nervously. No, I mean, maybe. I didn't know they were with anyone. Jonathan stared at her. Not angrily. Not with hate. Just with something deeper. Disappointment. Disgust. And then he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. You judged two little black girls based on how they look. You made them cry. You humiliated them in front of dozens of people. And no one stopped you. Silence. The gate agent behind the counter started to cry. Passengers who had just stood and watched suddenly looked uncomfortable. Sharon began to mumble again, but Jonathan cut her off with a simple wave of his hand. I've already called the board, he said. You're suspended. Effective immediately. A low murmur rolled through the terminal like thunder. Someone dropped a drink. Sharon gasped. Wait, please. Jonathan wasn't listening anymore. He took out his phone and tapped his screen. Moments later, several uniformed staff appeared, including Miss Denise, who came rushing in out of breath. Oh Lord, babies, she cried, running to the twins. I was gone 2 minutes. I'm so sorry. Jonathan smiled gently at her. You didn't do anything wrong, Denise. Thank you for always caring. She knelt down and hugged the girls tightly, her voice shaking. And just when things seemed to calm down, the airport's loudspeakers crackled again. Attention passengers. All outbound flights from Terminal C are now on hold until further notice. We apologize for the inconvenience. A security review is currently in progress. People groaned. Some shouted. One man yelled, I got a connection to make. But Jonathan was still standing tall, phone in hand. He wasn't done. He turned to a nearby staff member and said, Bring me the manager. Now. Within minutes, a red-faced man in a navy vest came jogging toward them. I'm so sorry, Mr. Green. I had no idea you were flying through today. I wasn't. My daughters were. The manager glanced at the girls, then back at Jonathan. I'll fix this, the manager said quickly. She'll be terminated. We'll release a statement. Whatever you want. Jonathan shook his head. I'm not interested in public relations. I want real changes. Sensitivity training. Accountability. Proper hiring practices. Yes, sir. And I want her escorted off the premises. Now. The manager hesitated. You want her removed in front of everyone? Jonathan didn't blink. Exactly in front of everyone. Because she did this in front of everyone. And so, Sharon was asked to hand over her badge and radio. A uniformed officer politely asked her to follow him out of the gate area. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she walked through the terminal, cameras following her every step. Ava and Alani watched quietly. They didn't smile. They didn't cheer. They were too young to fully understand what was happening, but they knew their dad had protected them, that he had made the world stop for them. Once Sharon was gone, Jonathan turned to the other staff. I'm flying with them now, he said. Put us on the next flight to Chicago. Together. The gate agent stammered. Yes, sir. Right away. The delay was lifted. Flights began moving again. Passengers slowly began to smile and chatter. The twins, now safe, boarded the plane hand in hand with their dad. But just when it seemed like things were over, as the plane rolled down the runway, Jonathan's phone buzzed. He looked at it and frowned. He stared at the screen for a long moment. Then he said something that made Ava and Alani both sit up straight. She wasn't working alone. The twins looked at each other. What do you mean? Ava whispered. Jonathan slowly turned off his phone and said, There's something else going on in this company. Something bigger. And just like that, the piece they thought they had found began to crack. Because this wasn't just about Sharon. It was about what, or who, allowed her to think she could get away with it in the first place. And now, they were going to find out. The plane touched down in Chicago, tires screeching softly against the runway. Inside the cabin, Ava and Alani were still holding hands. Their father, Jonathan Green, hadn't spoken much during the flight. He'd stared out the window the entire time, his mind clearly far from the clouds outside. He had received another message before takeoff. A message that changed everything. It wasn't from HR. It wasn't from legal. It was from someone anonymous. Just one sentence. Sharon was just the front. You need to look higher. Now, as the plane taxied toward the terminal, Jonathan finally spoke. I'm canceling my next board meeting, he told the flight attendant. Tell my assistant I'll be staying in Chicago for the week. The attendant nodded, already making the call. The girls looked up at him. Are we still going to Grandma's? Alani asked. Of course, Jonathan said, softening. You two are going to have the best weekend ever. Grandma's making her famous chocolate chip pancakes, remember? Ava smiled, but only a little. Are you okay, Daddy? Jonathan nodded slowly. I'm just thinking. That's all. Some things aren't adding up. He kissed their foreheads, then helped them down the stairs. Miss Denise had arranged for a trusted driver to meet them. The moment the twins were safely in Grandma's arms, laughing and reaching for syrup, Jonathan returned to his rental car, phone in hand. He scrolled through company emails, internal memos, and flight staff reports from the past 6 months. Sharon Moore wasn't just a rogue employee. Her record showed praise. Multiple compliments from supervisors. A spotless performance record. Not even a single complaint on file. That didn't match the woman who screamed at 2 children. Someone was covering for her. Or worse, encouraging her. Jonathan started digging. The first real clue came faster than expected. He accessed a confidential employee exit report from a month ago, one he hadn't seen before. A black flight attendant named Tasha Williams had resigned suddenly. No warning. No exit interview. But hidden in the notes was a single line written in a supervisor's handwriting. Tasha did not adjust well to our culture. Jonathan's hands tightened on the steering wheel. He knew Tasha. She had trained with the company for years. She was one of the brightest stars in the in-flight crew program. He called her. No answer. He called again. Still no answer. He tried one more time and left a voicemail. Hi, Tasha. It's Jonathan Green. I'd like to speak to you. Off the record. It's important. He hung up. For the rest of the night, he sat in his hotel room, waiting. But no call came. The next day passed quietly. Too quietly. He received a company-wide statement that his PR team had crafted for him. It read, Jet Sky International regrets the incident involving unaccompanied minors at Terminal C7. We are committed to diversity, safety, and integrity at all levels of our operation. Jonathan deleted the draft. He didn't want an apology. He wanted answers. On Sunday morning, just after sunrise, his phone buzzed. Unknown number. He answered. Hello. The voice on the other end was shaky. Mr. Green. Tasha. A pause. Then, I shouldn't be calling. I signed papers. But I saw what happened with your daughters. And I couldn't sleep. Jonathan sat up. Tell me everything. Tasha took a deep breath. Sharon didn't act alone. She's part of a group of supervisors and senior crew that call themselves the Line. They say it's about upholding standards, but really, it's about keeping things white. Jonathan felt his chest tighten. I tried to speak out once, Tasha said, when I saw one of the pilots laughing at a joke about a black family on board. Next thing I knew, I was reassigned 3 times in 1 week. Then came the write-ups. Fake ones. And after that, well, I resigned before they fired me. Do you have proof? I saved screenshots, emails, even some audio. But I'm scared, Mr. Green. They watch people. One of them once said, don't bother running to the top. He won't care. They meant you. Jonathan closed his eyes for a long moment. Then he said, send me everything you have. I'll protect you. Tasha hesitated. If you really want to bring them down, you'll have to go up against someone you know. Jonathan's eyes narrowed. Who? I'll let you figure that part out, she whispered. Because if I tell you, and I'm wrong, they'll know it was me. The call ended. Jonathan sat in silence for nearly an hour, until a knock came at his door. He opened it to find a hotel staff member standing there nervously. Mr. Green? There's a woman downstairs. Says her name is Pamela. She said to tell you. You've got bigger problems than your twins being told to get lost. Jonathan felt the chill rise through his spine. He didn't know any Pamela. He grabbed his blazer and headed downstairs. Pamela was waiting in the corner of the lobby, sunglasses on, hood up, sipping from a paper coffee cup. Jonathan sat across from her. You're the CEO, she said quietly. But you don't know your own company. Jonathan raised an eyebrow. Who are you? I used to be Sharon's trainer. Until I got demoted. Because I flagged her. 3 years ago. And no one listened. Oh, they listened. Then they promoted her. Pamela leaned forward. They told her to watch for certain types of passengers. You know what that means. Jonathan clenched his fists under the table. You're not fighting one woman, Pamela said. You're fighting a culture. A rotten one. From the inside. He sat back, stunned. You ready for that, Mr. Green? She asked. Before he could respond, a loud ding echoed through the lobby. His phone. An email had come through. No subject. Just a zip folder. From Tasha Williams. Inside were screenshots. Dozens of them. Audio files. One was named, training call _assist June.mp3. Another, Sharon supervisor exchange.png. As he tapped one open, Pamela stood up. I hope you're serious, she said. Because if you flinch now, they'll bury this. And your girls will never be safe again. She walked out, leaving him alone with the truth. And just as he began listening to the first audio file, a voice in the background, one he recognized, laughed and said, let them cry. That's what gets them moved quicker anyway. Jonathan's blood turned cold. He knew that voice. It belonged to one of his own VPs. And just like that, this went from a single bad employee to a full-on conspiracy. He stood up fast, breathing hard. The coffee cup on the table tipped and rolled to the floor. It was time to dig even deeper. But as he reached the elevator, his phone buzzed again. This time a video. From a blocked number. The subject line read, check what they did when they thought the twins were alone. He opened it, and his heart broke all over again. Because what he saw was much worse than what he had heard. And now, he had to make a decision that could destroy his own company. Or save it. But at a cost. One he wasn't sure he was ready to pay. Jonathan stood frozen in the hotel hallway, the video still playing on his phone. The quality wasn't perfect, shaky and filmed through what looked like a security camera feed, but the footage was clear enough. There were his daughters, Ava and Alani, sitting on the bench near gate C7, swinging their legs and sipping juice. Then came Sharon. But she wasn't alone. Behind her, 2 other uniformed airline employees walked up. Both men, both white, both in supervisor vests. They weren't gate agents. They weren't supposed to be anywhere near Terminal C7 that morning. Sharon said something. One of the men laughed. The other leaned down toward Ava's backpack, picked it up, and turned it upside down, spilling its contents all over the floor. Juice box, crayons, a small notepad, and a wrapped granola bar tumbled out. The girls flinched. Jonathan's jaw clenched. He watched as Ava quickly scrambled to pick up her things, her tiny hands shaking. Alani wrapped her arms around her teddy bear, eyes wide. They looked terrified. Sharon didn't stop it. She didn't say anything. In fact, she looked amused. And then, worse, the man who dumped Ava's bag said something. The camera had no sound, but Jonathan could read his lips. They don't belong here. Little hood rats. He paused the video. His throat tightened. He'd seen corporate racism before. He'd heard coded language. He'd sat through fake apologies and half-hearted diversity meetings. But this was children. His children. Tears of rage burned at the corners of his eyes. He couldn't just be a CEO anymore. He had to be a father first. He had to take it all down. And he would. Jonathan opened his phone and started composing a message, one he never thought he'd write. To Board of Directors. Subject, Emergency Session Request, Internal Corruption and Misconduct. I am calling an emergency executive session. I have obtained video and audio evidence that confirms an internal culture of targeted harassment and discrimination within Jet Sky International, perpetuated by management-level employees. We are opening a full investigation. You will be provided materials ahead of the meeting. There will be no cover-ups. There will be no spin. Prepare yourselves. He hit send. Then he called his lawyer. Reese, he said, when the man answered, we're going to war. Quietly, but completely. Against who? Reese asked. My own leadership. The lawyer whistled. I assume this isn't about money. Jonathan shook his head. It's about my girls. It's about every family that's ever been humiliated or treated like trash just for how they look. I'm not losing them to this company. There was a long pause. Then Reese said, tell me where to meet you. That night, back at his mother's house, Jonathan tucked Ava and Alani into bed. He kissed their foreheads, sat on the edge of the bed, and held their hands. I'm proud of you, he whispered. For what? Ava asked, yawning. For being brave. For standing up for yourselves. For calling me when something felt wrong. Alani looked up at him, sleepy-eyed. Are you mad at that lady? Jonathan sighed. I'm mad at the people who let her think it was okay to treat you like that. Are you going to fire her? I already did. Ava smiled. Good. They drifted off to sleep soon after. Jonathan walked out of the room and pulled the door softly shut. Downstairs, his mother was waiting for him with a mug of tea. You look like you haven't breathed in a day, she said. I haven't, he admitted. She handed him the tea, sat beside him on the couch, and looked him dead in the eye. So what are you going to do? He looked down at the tea, then back up at her. I'm going to tear it all down, brick by brick. And I don't care who tries to stop me. That's when his phone rang again. This time, it was Reese. Jonathan, you're not going to like this, the lawyer said. Jonathan stood up. What now? Your company email was just accessed by someone else. Someone high up. They saw the board message you sent. They've already started moving files. Scrubbing names. Cleaning house. Jonathan's chest tightened. How? I sent it to internal accounts. They knew. They were watching you. You're not the only one who's been collecting files. Jonathan paced the room. Then we've got to move faster. We can't, Reese said. Unless you want to lose everything in one go. Jonathan stopped. What do you mean? I mean we need a whistleblower. A public one. Someone with evidence. Someone whose story can't be buried. Jonathan's blood ran cold. Because he knew who that had to be. Him. I'll do it, he said. I'll go on the record. Reese went quiet. Are you sure? This will put a target on your back. The board could remove you. You could be sued, lose control of the company. Then let them come, Jonathan said. Because I'll burn the whole thing down before I let this happen to another black child. Reese took a breath. Then I'll start the paperwork. As they hung up, Jonathan's phone buzzed again. This time, a name popped up on screen. Unknown contact. Do not trust her. He tapped to open the message. Inside was a screenshot of an email chain between Sharon and someone else, someone high up. To Sharon Moore. From VP Kimberly Holloway. Subject, Re. Unaccompanied minor issue. Just make sure they're unsettled. We don't need his kind making headlines again. Push the edge, but stay clean. You'll be protected. Jonathan's entire body went still. Kimberly Holloway. One of the company's senior vice presidents. And a longtime family friend. She had attended Ava and Alani's 5th birthday party. She had hugged them, pretended to love them. And now she was orchestrating this. Jonathan sat back down, hands shaking, and realized something even darker. This wasn't just about the culture of one company. This was a war inside his own house. And the next step would require something bigger than a legal meeting. He needed the press. He needed public pressure. He needed to expose Kimberly Holloway. But how do you take down someone that powerful? Especially when you once trusted them like family. That question echoed in his head as he stared into the shadows of the quiet living room. Then he turned to his laptop, opened a new email. To editor@nationalwirenews.com. Subject: Internal racism and corruption at Jet Sky International. I am the CEO, and I have something to say. He hit send. Then he closed the laptop and whispered into the silence. Let's see who really runs this company. And just then, a loud crash came from the front porch. Jonathan rushed to the window and looked out. His rental car was smashed, windows shattered, tires slashed, and spray painted across the hood, in red letters, were two words: stay quiet. He stepped back from the window, but he didn't feel fear. He felt something else. Fuel. This was war now, and he wasn't backing down. Rain fell hard on the roof of his mother's house, tapping out a chaotic rhythm like a warning. Jonathan Green stood at the window, staring down at his wrecked rental car, the red spray-painted threat still fresh and bleeding under the downpour. Stay quiet. He didn't move. Not at first. He wasn't shocked. He wasn't even angry. Not anymore. He was calm. Too calm. The kind of calm a man feels when he's already crossed a line in his mind, and there's no turning back. Behind him, his mother's voice broke the silence. Do I need to call someone? Jonathan didn't take his eyes off the car. No. But I will. He walked to the kitchen, dialed his lawyer again. Reese. You saw it. Reese answered immediately. It's escalating. They know I'm not playing. And now I know they're desperate. We've got about 48 hours before the story drops, Reese said. National Wire News will run it Monday morning. After that, the media storm begins. You sure you're ready for this? I was ready the moment they made my daughters cry. He hung up. In the quiet that followed, Jonathan sat down at the kitchen table and began sorting through the growing mountain of evidence. Screenshots, video files, internal reports. The deeper he looked, the uglier it became. Hiring managers joking about too many urban applicants. Flight attendant group chats filled with emojis mocking black hair, hijabs, and hood accents. One pilot's comment that said, if they can't afford first class, they can afford silence. Jonathan felt sick. But one thread caught his eye. The name Kimberly Holloway popped up again and again. She'd signed off on key personnel reports. She'd approved promotions for employees like Sharon. She had even been quietly attending culture forums that had since been dissolved and scrubbed from internal servers. And the worst part? She had once co-authored Jet Sky's official diversity and equity pledge. That meant the person responsible for making the company look progressive was actually working to keep it rotten. Jonathan knew it wasn't just racism. It was betrayal. And now, the only way to clean it all was to drag the truth into the light, publicly. That night, he wrote out his statement to be read on live air during the press interview set for Monday morning. It was powerful, honest, and it named names. It ended with, this company does not belong to bigotry. It belongs to the people who trusted us to get them home. That includes my daughters. And I will not be silent while the walls rot around them. He saved it, closed the file, and checked on Ava and Alani, who were snuggled up in bed with stuffed animals and storybooks. He kissed their foreheads. He turned to leave, and that's when the knock came. 3 soft taps at the door. Jonathan's heart jumped. He walked slowly to the front entrance and peered through the peephole. It was Miss Denise. He opened the door quickly. Denise? What are you doing here? She was soaking wet, rain dripping off her flower-printed umbrella. Her eyes were wide, frantic. I didn't know where else to go, she said. They're coming after me too. Jonathan pulled her inside, handed her a towel. Tell me everything, he said. She sat at the kitchen table, wringing water from her sleeves. Someone from HR called me this morning. Said I was under performance review. But I've been with the company 30 years, Jonathan. You know my record. I do. Then they said they had footage of me violating policy by leaving the girls alone too long at the gate. I didn't leave them. I was gone 3 minutes to get the damn printout for the flight captain. Jonathan's jaw tightened. They're trying to smear you, he said. Make you the fall. I thought I was safe, she said, voice shaking. I thought they couldn't touch me. You're not alone. She looked up. I don't have anything to hide. But if they fire me, I lose my pension, my health care, everything. Jonathan reached across the table and took her hand. They won't. I won't let that happen. I've got lawyers, journalists. And now, your story too. Denise nodded, holding back tears. I never thought I'd see this day, she whispered. We're a company I gave my life to would throw me to the wolves. Jonathan stood. Then let's remind them what loyalty really looks like. But just as the words left his mouth, his phone vibrated again. It was a text from an unknown number. It read, "If you go on air Monday, we leak your private family files. Don't test us." Attached was a single image. A picture of Jonathan's divorce paperwork. From years ago, back when he and the twins' mother had separated for a time, during his lowest point. They were threatening to use his past, his pain, to ruin him. He stared at the screen. Miss Denise saw his face. What is it? He turned the phone toward her. She covered her mouth. No. They're scared, he said flatly. They wouldn't threaten me unless they knew what I had. Denise's voice grew firm. So what are you going to do now? Jonathan looked at her, and then at the image on his phone. Then he made his choice. I'm going live early, he said. Not Monday. Tomorrow. Sunday. I'm not giving them time to bury this or smear me. But the press isn't ready. Then I'll use my own platforms. My company channels. My followers. My voice. And just like that, the plan shifted. Sunday morning, Jet Sky's official Twitter, Instagram, and company app would host a live stream. A special message from CEO Jonathan Green. In it, he'd reveal the evidence. He'd name the names. And he'd show the video of his daughters being humiliated. No edits. No spin. Just the truth. And the world would decide what to do next. But as he got up to prepare the broadcast, one of Ava's cries echoed down the hallway. Jonathan ran to the bedroom. Alani was sitting up in bed, holding her sister's hand. She's shaking, Alani said. Daddy, she's scared again. Jonathan picked Ava up gently, cradling her. I had a bad dream, she whispered, tears on her cheek. What was it about? The airport, she said. They kept yelling at us. And you didn't come. His heart cracked. I'll always come, he said. Always. He rocked her back and forth until she calmed. But inside, a fire had already started. Because this was more than a PR disaster. More than a boardroom scandal. This was trauma. This was memory. And unless he fixed it now, truly fixed it, his daughters would carry this forever. By dawn, the live stream post was scheduled. Millions would see it. But none of them, not even Jonathan, knew what was coming. Because while he was planning to blow the lid off the company, Kimberly Holloway was planning her next move. And hers was far more dangerous. Sunday morning arrived heavy and gray. Clouds hung low over Chicago, pressing against the skyline like they were holding their breath. Inside Jonathan Green's hotel suite, the air was just as thick. Lights were on. Phones were buzzing. Laptops open. Cables ran across the floor, connecting microphones and cameras to his personal media team, called in at the last second. He hadn't told anyone outside his circle what he was about to do. Not the board. Not the media. Not the PR firm. Because he knew they would try to stop him. Instead, he launched the live stream quietly, using JetSky's own internal platforms, tools he had executive access to as CEO. The company's YouTube channel, the JetSky app, and its social media feeds all went live at 9 a.m. Eastern sharp with one title. A message from the CEO. By 9:02, over 200,000 people were watching. By 9:05, it had crossed 500,000. Jonathan sat at a simple table in front of a plain black backdrop, no suit, no tie. Just him in a dark sweater, looking directly into the camera. He began with a deep breath. Then he said, My name is Jonathan Green. I am the CEO of JetSky International. And today, I'm not speaking to you as an executive. I'm speaking to you as a father. He paused, letting the silence settle. Then he continued. 2 days ago, my twin daughters, 8 years old, were screamed at and humiliated in one of our terminals. Not because they broke rules. Not because they caused trouble. But because they were black. Because someone looked at them and decided they didn't belong. That someone worked for my company. And she was not alone. He told the story. All of it. The threats. The video. The slurs. The years of hidden complaints. The cover-ups. He held up screenshots. Played audio clips. Showed the footage of Ava's backpack being dumped onto the terminal floor. And then, without warning, he played the security video. The camera panned over his daughters, sitting alone. The laughter. The way Sharon crossed her arms and said, Get lost. The bag flipping. The tears. Jonathan didn't flinch. He watched the video along with the world. When it ended, he looked back at the camera. If this is what happens to children when they travel alone, What happens to adults who don't have a CEO for a father? How many passengers have we silenced, ignored, or brushed aside because of the color of their skin? He paused again, then said quietly, "We've failed them. And I've failed you. But not anymore." By now, the view count had surged past 1.3 million. Thousands of comments rolled in. "This is what accountability looks like. We believe you. Fire everyone who let this happen. I've flown jet sky my whole life. Never again until this is fixed." Jonathan ended with a promise. "I am launching a full, independent investigation into Jet Sky's leadership, hiring practices, training systems, and complaint procedures. And yes, I will step down if it's what it takes to rebuild this company the right way." Then he stood, looked into the lens one final time, and said, "To the passengers we failed, to the families who cried in silence, and to my daughters, who were told to get lost, I hear you now. And I'm not going anywhere." He clicked the stream off, and for one brief moment, the silence in the room was full of power, full of peace. But it didn't last, because not 10 seconds later, Reese, his lawyer, burst into the room, holding his phone out. "John, you need to see this." "What is it?" Reese turned the phone around. "A news article. Just posted. Blazing headline. Breaking. Jet Sky CEO under investigation for misuse of company resources during divorce." Jonathan's blood ran cold. He clicked the link. Inside was a long, suspiciously detailed story suggesting that Jonathan had used company planes and funds to secure private legal leverage during his messy split from his ex-wife years ago. A private matter. Twisted. Framed like embezzlement. It wasn't true. But the article didn't need to be true. It just needed to cause doubt. His live stream had just exposed Kimberly Holloway's circle, and this was their response. A smear campaign, designed to flip the narrative. "I knew they'd come for me," Jonathan muttered. "But not this fast." Reese was already typing on his laptop. "This is Holloway. Has to be. She's trying to undercut your credibility before the board meets. You think she leaked old legal files? I know she did. And she's got a PR firm behind it too. This isn't freelance gossip. It's a coordinated attack." Jonathan ran a hand down his face. "What's the damage?" Reese looked grim. "Enough that if the board believes any of it, they can hold an emergency vote and strip you of your CEO title before tomorrow." Jonathan paused. "Even after that live stream?" "Especially because of that live stream. You called out corruption within your own house. The board won't see that as brave. They'll see it as betrayal. If she flips just 4 members, you're gone." Jonathan turned to the window, heart pounding. He watched the city stretch far beyond the glass, unaware of the war unfolding behind boardroom doors. He whispered, "I might lose everything." Reese stood next to him. "You might, but there's one more move." "What?" Reese handed him a flash drive. "Tasha sent this last night. It's a full recorded conversation. Holloway and Sharon. In a private meeting. No denials. Just ugly truth. Is it legal? Recorded on a work device. She didn't know it was on." Jonathan stared at the flash drive. "If we release this, we bury her." Reese nodded. "But it also makes this a war in front of the entire country." Jonathan looked at the flash drive. Then he looked at a framed photo of Ava and Alani sitting next to his laptop. And in that moment, the choice became simple. He turned to Reese. "Get the press. Get legal clearance. Get this everywhere." "You sure?" Jonathan nodded. "I'm not losing my girls to a system that protects people like Holloway." But as Reese opened his laptop to prepare the release, the lights in the hotel suite flickered, then went out. The room fell into darkness. Jonathan stood still, blinking. What the hell? Then the emergency lights kicked in. A red glow filled the room. Reese's laptop buzzed, then crashed. Entire systems were failing. A hotel staff member ran in. "Sir, there's an electrical issue on this floor. Possibly a power surge." Jonathan grabbed his phone. No signal. He checked the outlets. Dead. Everything. Dead. And then his phone buzzed. One message. From another blocked number. "No more uploads. Or the next blackout will be permanent." He stared at the message, the words glowing in red emergency light. And he realized, Holloway wasn't just using lies. She was cutting the wires. Literally. Trying to stop the truth by any means. Jonathan looked at Reese. "Get us a backup location. Now. We finish this. Tonight." Reese nodded. And as they packed everything into bags and hard drives, Jonathan whispered to himself, "If they want war in the dark, then I'll bring light. But outside, somewhere in a dark office building, Kimberly Holloway watched her screen flicker and smiled. She wasn't done yet, and her next move would hit closer to Jonathan than anyone ever expected. The storm outside had turned violent. Lightning streaked across the night sky as Jonathan Green and Reese climbed into a second rental car, this one borrowed from a trusted friend, and sped away from the blacked-out hotel. Everything had been packed into waterproof cases, hard drives, the flash drive with the audio evidence, burner phones, and backup power banks. They had less than 12 hours to make their next move. Jonathan's daughters were now safe in a second, undisclosed location with his mother and Miss Denise. Security had been quietly arranged. No more chances. No more close calls. Jonathan had seen what Kimberly Holloway was capable of. If she could stage a power failure at one of the city's top hotels, just to block a video upload, what else was she willing to do? Where are we going? Reese asked, glancing in the mirror. Jonathan pulled onto the freeway. My old office. Downtown HQ. Before the tower was built, I used to run everything from a private floor above an old conference center. Still has satellite internet. Backup servers. Manual locks. Reese gave a low whistle. You really don't trust anyone anymore, do you? Jonathan's eyes stayed hard on the road. Not after what I've seen. The building was quiet when they arrived. No front desk staff. No security guards. Just a maintenance man Jonathan had trusted for 20 years, who met them at the rear loading dock and nodded them in silently. The private office space smelled like dust and old leather. But the server room was intact. Cold. Secure. Untouched. Within minutes, Reese was uploading the audio file to multiple outlets. News organizations, cloud backups, even overseas press. If anything happened to them now, the story would still go public. At least, that was the plan. But just as Reese prepared to upload to the largest platform, Global News Live, the screen froze. A single message popped up in red text. Access revoked. Request blocked by legal injunction. Jonathan leaned over. What the hell is that? Reese stared at the screen. Someone filed an emergency injunction. To block publication. That fast. She must have gone to a federal judge. Probably claimed the audio was stolen or that it violates corporate confidentiality. Jonathan's face went pale. She's not just trying to stop us. She's building a counter case. One that paints us as the criminals. Then his phone rang. Private number. He answered, hesitating. Hello. A voice. Smooth. Icy. Feminine. Jonathan. This is Kimberly. He didn't respond. You've made a mess, she said calmly. You've scared good people. Loyal employees. You're making noise. But noise doesn't fix broken systems. Jonathan grit his teeth. You are the broken system. She chuckled. Maybe. But I keep the wings in the air. You want the public to believe a few angry tweets will dismantle decades of leadership? Be serious. You're done, Kimberly. No, she said sharply. You're done. Because while you were busy telling sob stories, I filed a board emergency vote. Your position as CEO is being reviewed as we speak. Jonathan's breath caught. You can't call a vote without informing me. You're being accused of leaking confidential data, staging a smear campaign, and violating internal communications policies. I don't have to inform you if we're voting to suspend. Jonathan's mind reeled. You're bluffing. I'm not. But here's my offer, she said smoothly. Withdraw the live stream. Apologize. Say you misunderstood. That you overreacted. He closed his eyes. Do that, and I'll let you retire. Quietly. With your legacy mostly intact. And if I don't? There was a pause. Then the next time your daughters fly, Kimberly whispered, they'll get lost for real. Jonathan's body went still. The line went dead. For a few seconds, he didn't move. Then he looked at Reese. Forget the press. Forget Global News Live. We do this our way. Reese frowned. You mean? Yes, Jonathan said. I'm going back to Jet Sky's tower. I'm walking into that boardroom, and I'm dropping the truth on them myself. You do that, and she'll bury you. Jonathan looked down at the flash drive. No, he said. I'll bury her. 2 hours later, Jet Sky's corporate tower glowed against the dark skyline like a lighthouse for liars. Inside, the boardroom was already filling. Members shuffled in, confused, some nervous, others checking their phones as whispers spread like wildfire. What's this emergency meeting really about? Did you hear about the live stream? Someone said he's being ousted. Didn't his kids get involved somehow? At exactly 11:58 p.m., The double doors swung open, and Jonathan Green walked in, not in a suit, not flanked by lawyers. Alone. He carried only two things, his phone and the flash drive. Kimberly Holloway sat at the far end of the table, wearing a black pantsuit and an expression that said, "Calm down, this is business." She looked up. "Jonathan, I didn't expect you to come." He placed the flash drive on the table. "I know. I'm afraid this meeting is now a closed executive session," she said smoothly. "You're under suspension review." "I'm not here for the meeting," he said. "I'm here for the reckoning." She narrowed her eyes. Jonathan turned to the board. "All of you received a legal summary this morning," he said. "It shows what you already knew, that Sharon Moore was a symptom of a deeper disease." A few members looked away. "Today, I bring you the cure." He plugged the flash drive into the room's central projector. The screen flickered. Kimberly's voice filled the boardroom. "Just make sure they're unsettled. We don't need his kind making headlines again. Push the edge, but stay clean. You'll be protected. Let them cry. That's what gets them moved quicker anyway." Gasps. Silence. And then a single line that sealed her fate. "He won't fight us. He can't. He loves this company more than he loves his own children." Jonathan turned off the projector. No one moved. Even Kimberly sat motionless, her lips pressed into a tight, pale line. Then a hand rose slowly. "Board member number 3, is that audio verified?" Reese stepped into the room then, at last, carrying a certified affidavit from Tasha Williams and the metadata from the recording. "It's verified," Reese said. "Stamped, time-logged, and legally admissible." Board member number 5 whispered, "Oh my God." Another muttered, "We backed the wrong horse." Jonathan looked around the table. "I'm not asking for my job back," he said. "I'm demanding a full purge. A clean slate. Every executive who touched this culture goes. Or I walk, and I take this public. All of it." The room was dead silent. Then Kimberly finally stood. "This is insanity. He's a man on a mission, not a leader." Jonathan turned to her, voice low. "No, I'm a father who gave you the chance to do the right thing. And you told me my daughters would get lost for real." A hush swept the room. One board member whispered, "She threatened children?" Jonathan nodded. "You want her as your legacy? Or me?" And just like that, the vote began. One by one. 12 members. Hands raised. Kimberly voted no. Everyone else voted yes. Unanimous. She was terminated. Effective immediately. Security escorted her out without a word. And Jonathan? He remained standing. Not triumphant, but strong. His daughters were safe. The truth was free. And Jet Sky was finally ready to fly clean. But just as he was about to walk out of the boardroom, his phone buzzed. A new message. From a number he didn't recognize. Just one line. "You won today." But someone else was watching. And attached was a blurry photo of Miss Denise, sitting at a diner, with a stranger. Jonathan's eyes narrowed. The war wasn't over. It had just changed battlefields. The photo on Jonathan's phone was grainy, but unmistakable. Miss Denise, sitting at a chrome table inside what looked like a 24-hour diner. Her sweater with the signature flower pin. A cup of coffee half drunk in front of her. Across from her, a man, his face obscured, blurry, intentional. Not someone Jonathan recognized. But something about the body language told him it wasn't casual. Denise leaned in close. Her hands were balled into nervous fists. The man sat relaxed, like he was in control. And then there was the message again. "You won today." But someone else was watching. Jonathan stared at the image. Who sent it? Why? Was Denise in danger? Was she being watched? Or worse, manipulated? Reese noticed his change in expression. "John? What is it?" Jonathan flipped the phone around. "Someone's following Denise." Reese frowned. "That diner. I know that wallpaper. It's halfway between your mother's place and the airport. Which means whoever this is knew exactly where she'd be and when." Jonathan paced the now empty boardroom, heart pounding. What if this isn't about Jet Sky anymore? What if this is bigger? Reese rubbed his chin. "You think someone above Holloway was pulling strings?" Jonathan nodded slowly. "Or parallel. Someone she protected. Someone she worked for." Reese's brows furrowed. "There's no one higher than her in the management chain unless you're talking about the board chair," Jonathan finished, staring out the glass wall. Gerald Kincaid, an old friend of Jonathan's father. A man who had been in Jet Sky's corporate structure since the Reagan era. Never flashy. Never public. Always behind the scenes. He hadn't voted during the board meeting. He hadn't even been present. And yet, Jonathan had seen his name CC'd on internal reports about Sharon Moore and Kimberly's diversity committee before it was dissolved. Jonathan took a slow breath. Get me Kincaid's schedule. You think he's the one behind this? I think he's the only one powerful enough to make Holloway believe she was untouchable. Later that afternoon, in a high-rise suite overlooking Lake Michigan, Gerald Kincaid was preparing for a meeting. He was in his 80s now, hair a silvery cloud, glasses thin and precise. He moved with the grace of an aging lion, slow but alert, powerful. He didn't seem surprised when Jonathan walked through the door. Well, Kincaid said softly, I was wondering how long it would take you to get here. Jonathan didn't sit. You were behind it. Kincaid raised an eyebrow. Behind what exactly? You empowered Kimberly. You ignored Sharon. You protected this system while people suffered. I protected the company, Kincaid said evenly. We built this airline from the ground up, Jonathan. You and I both know that the minute you let public outrage steer the ship, you lose the map. Jonathan's voice darkened. Two little girls were humiliated. And it made headlines, Kincaid said, folding his hands. Now the brand's bleeding. Shares are dropping. This is what happens when you let emotion drive leadership. Jonathan took a step forward. Emotion didn't wreck the culture. Racism did. Kincaid's expression didn't change. I'm not here to debate politics with you. I'm here to offer you your exit. My what? You can step down. Quietly. Gracefully. We'll appoint a new CEO, someone polished. You get to walk away with your name still halfway clean. Jonathan stared at him. You think I care about my name right now? I think, Kincaid said calmly. You care about your family. Your privacy. Your daughters. The temperature in the room dropped. Was that a threat? Jonathan said softly. No. Kincaid replied, standing slowly. It's a reality. We live in a world where power doesn't get handed over because someone gave a passionate speech. Power has to be traded. And if you're not willing to play the game. He trailed off. Jonathan turned to leave. But just before he opened the door, he said, There's one thing you don't understand. What's that? Kincaid asked. Jonathan looked over his shoulder. I stopped playing your game the moment someone told my daughters to get lost. I'm not asking anymore. I'm building something new. And then he walked out. By midnight, the audio files had been distributed globally. Jonathan bypassed legal injunctions using whistleblower protections and had secured Tasha Williams, Denise, and multiple former employees for on-camera interviews. The evidence now existed on more than just news sites. It was everywhere. Podcasts, YouTube channels, school curriculums. Parents across America watched the clip of Ava's backpack being dumped. A black mother in Florida cried in her kitchen. A retired pilot in Texas publicly resigned from Jet Sky in protest. A white father in Seattle wrote, If it happened to those girls, it could happen to mine. I'm out. By Monday morning, Jet Sky's stock dropped 13%. But something else happened too. Something bigger. A group of employees, flight attendants, ground crew, even some pilots, released an open letter supporting Jonathan. It read, We believe in our passengers. We believe in a workplace that protects our children, not punishes them. We believe in CEO Jonathan Green. The letter was signed by over 2,000 employees. Ava and Alani were watching with their grandma when the letter came on TV. Daddy's not in trouble anymore. Alani asked. No, baby, Grandma smiled. Your daddy just started something. Something that's going to help a lot of people. Ava's eyes lit up. Like superheroes. Yes, Grandma said, eyes misty. Exactly like that. But in a dark corner of the internet. Another message was sent. Not to Jonathan. Not to Kimberly. But to someone else. A man with no face online. A ghost in the system. All the message said was, Phase 2. Jet Sky was the test. The next target is bigger. Start with her, Denise. And attached to it was a new list of names. People who had spoken out. People who had stood with Jonathan. People who now had targets on their backs. Because Jet Sky was never the finish line. It was the first domino. And the person tipping the rest had just begun. It started with a flicker. Not at Jet Sky. Not in an airport. But at a neighborhood grocery store just 10 blocks from where Miss Denise lived. She was standing in aisle 3, reading the label on a bottle of olive oil, when the lights above her buzzed, blinked, then died. For 3 seconds, the store fell into eerie, silent darkness. Then the emergency lights snapped on. No music. No announcements. No explanation. Denise's chest tightened. She turned slowly. Someone was watching her. A man. Dark baseball cap, too big on his head. A scarf pulled high over his face. He stood at the end of the aisle, pretending to scroll through his phone. Denise dropped the bottle into her basket and moved toward the front, her heart racing. It happened again as she walked past the checkout. The lights dimmed, just enough to send her brain into panic. Was she imagining it? No. She'd felt this before. Back when she was the only black woman in training. Back when supervisors joked about giving her extra demerits. Back when she had to smile through humiliation to keep her job. Now it was back. But this time it had fangs. She made it to her car, keys shaking in her hand. She didn't start the engine right away. Just sat there, staring at the fogged-up windshield, breathing hard. Then she saw it, tucked under her wiper blade. A slip of paper. She got out slowly, keeping her head low as the rain started to fall. She unfolded the paper. In tight, typewritten font were just 4 words. You should have stayed quiet. Across town, Jonathan stood in the new temporary operations room, a converted co-working space now buzzing with movement. Screens on every wall. Phone lines jammed. Legal teams, tech experts, and even cybersecurity advisors now worked in rotations. Jet Sky had been split down the middle. Half the company supported Jonathan. The other half feared what came next. He scrolled through messages as Reese burst in holding his phone. John, he said, voice low. You need to see this. He showed him a security alert from the company's internal network. Someone was digging, not just into financials, but into personnel files. Tasha's, Denise's, even Ava and Alani's flight history had been flagged and copied. Jonathan's heart dropped. How did they get access? They didn't go through the front door, Reese said grimly. This wasn't hacking. This was internal. Someone still inside the company is feeding outside operators. Kimberly. She's gone, Reese replied. But her network isn't. Someone else has taken the wheel. Jonathan rubbed his temples. So now it's a shadow war. And Denise just became a target. She already was, Reese said. You were the main show. But Denise? She's the heart. If they can make her break, go silent, it sends a message to the others. Speak up. And this is what happens. Jonathan looked at a map of the city glowing on the wall. Flight paths, routes, employee addresses. It wasn't just about airlines anymore. This was about fear, control, silencing. And whoever was pulling the strings was getting bolder. Jonathan picked up his phone and called Denise. She answered immediately. Baby, I think I'm in trouble. I know, he said. I'm coming to you now. No, don't, she said quickly. If they see you come, they'll know I talked. Denise. I need to disappear for a while, she said quietly. Just until this blows over. You disappear, and they win, Jonathan said. They'll say you were lying, that you were unstable. You're proof. I'm also a grandmother, she said. And if they follow me to my family's house. Her voice trailed off. Jonathan closed his eyes. Then let me protect you. She didn't answer right away. Then she said, I'll meet you tonight. Private. Just you. You pick the place. Jonathan hesitated, then said, the old hangar, where we trained in '98. I remember, she said softly. You were the only man who brought his own lunch. He smiled faintly. Still do. And then she hung up. That night, the abandoned hangar was silent. No power. No cameras. Just wind rattling through the rusted beams. Jonathan stood inside near the old lockers, flashlight beam cutting through the dark. He heard the door creak open. Denise, he called out. No answer. He walked toward the entrance slowly. Then he saw her, just inside the doorway. But something was wrong. She wasn't alone. A second figure stood behind her, holding her arm. Jonathan stepped forward instinctively. Hey, let her go. Don't move, the man said. The voice was calm. Even. American, but with a trained precision, military, maybe. He stepped out of the shadow. Not a Jet Sky employee. Not a board member. But something else. Dressed in black. Clean-shaven. Wearing gloves. His eyes locked on Jonathan. Mr. Green, he said. I have a message from the network. Jonathan's hands curled into fists. What network? The one that Kimberly answered to. He gently pushed Denise forward. She stumbled toward Jonathan, unharmed but pale. She didn't break, the man said. But I'd rethink your next few moves. Jonathan stepped between the man and Denise. You show up like this again, Jonathan said coldly. And it won't be a conversation. The man smiled faintly. Then he tossed something at Jonathan's feet. A small metal case. I don't make threats, he said. I just deliver options. Then he turned and walked into the night, vanishing behind the hangar's side exit like smoke. Jonathan picked up the case. Inside, a single USB stick and a note. Everything you've seen is only Chapter 1. Denise leaned against the locker, breathing hard. Who was that? Jonathan stared at the USB stick. I don't know, he said. But they've been watching us from the start. He turned to her. This isn't about Jet Sky anymore. It's about something bigger. And as he looked down at the USB, he wondered what truths still lay buried. Because whatever this new chapter held, it wasn't just about saving a company anymore. It was about saving the future. And the storm had only just begun. Jonathan didn't sleep. Not that night. Not after what he saw. Back at the safe house, the USB stick glowed faintly in the dark like a warning. He sat at the table alone, headphones in, staring at the screen as the encrypted files unfolded before him one by one. Inside were folders, labeled by year, by name, by airport. Each one contained surveillance footage, internal HR reports, and quietly buried passenger complaints, some that never made it to legal. The pattern was undeniable. Targeted removals, random seat downgrades, lost luggage, all disproportionately involving Black, Hispanic, and Muslim passengers. Employees of color transferred after vague attitude write-ups. Promotion chains that stopped cold at the first sign of a diverse candidate. But then Jonathan found something that made his stomach drop. A folder labeled Triad. He clicked it open. Inside were strategy documents, memos drafted not by Jet Sky, but by a private security consulting group based in Virginia. The logo on the letterhead was unfamiliar, but ominous. 3 triangles intertwined. One file caught his eye. Community Exposure Prevention Protocol. It detailed tactics, actual strategies, to discourage high-profile non-white flyers from appearing in first-class lounges, from frequenting top-tier routes, from being seen too often. Words like containment, passive deterrence, and cultural erosion zones were used as if they were normal. It was written clinically, efficiently, like a disease control plan. Jonathan scrolled to the bottom. Authorized by G.H. Kincaid. He dropped the headphones. The file echoed in his ears. This wasn't just racism. It was a coordinated social engineering project, buried inside corporate logistics. And Jet Sky was just the first domino. Denise entered quietly, a steaming mug in her hands. You been up all night? Jonathan nodded. Find something. He turned the laptop toward her. Denise read silently. Her face didn't show shock. Just a tired, bitter knowing. I always said, she whispered. They didn't just want to keep us quiet. They wanted to keep us in place. Jonathan's phone buzzed. Reese. He picked up quickly. Talk to me. Reese's voice was sharp. We've got a problem. Kincaid stepping forward publicly. Claims you authorized the Triad project years ago as part of a pilot data study. Jonathan nearly dropped the phone. That's a lie. I know. But he's got media in his pocket. He's spinning you as the architect. Says you're lashing out to hide your own fingerprints. Jonathan stood, blood boiling. That old man is trying to frame me for his network's work. John, there's more. They're planning to leak a witness, someone who worked in your old executive office who'll testify that you knew about Triad. Jonathan's heart sank. He paced the room, thinking hard. That means they're trying to wipe the slate clean, make me the villain, keep the rest of them safe. And there's one more thing, Reese said. Your daughters, they're trending again. Someone's using their names in smear threads, turning them into memes. Jonathan's hand gripped the table. He had started this to protect them. And now, the machine was turning them into pawns. We need a new move, Reese said. Something that crushes this. Right now. Jonathan looked back at the screen, at the folders, and then it hit him. They built this to last in secret. But if I can tie Triad to other airlines, to other industries, then it's no longer just my word against theirs. He clicked into another file. Scan names. And there it was. A shared partner code. Virtuair, Equity Coordination Initiative. Virtuair, the second largest airline in the country. They weren't just running this through Jet Sky, Jonathan said slowly. They were testing it here, then exporting it. Reese's voice sharpened. You're saying this is a syndicate? Jonathan nodded. I'm saying this is a nationwide system, hidden in corporate language, across airlines, hotels, airports, Maybe even public transit. Reese let out a low breath. We need a documentary. No. A congressional hearing. No, Jonathan said. We need something bigger. He turned to Denise. We need a town hall. We bring in the people they hurt. The voices they silenced. We give them the stage. In front of cameras. Live. Denise blinked. You mean like? Yes, Jonathan said. We host a truth assembly. Reese paused. They'll try to block it. Let them, Jonathan said. Because every time they try to silence us, we get louder. 2 weeks later, in a packed auditorium in Atlanta, the truth assembly began. Chairs lined in neat rows. Media booths set up. Thousands tuned in online. Jonathan stood at the podium in a plain navy blazer. Ava and Alani sat in the front row, holding hands with their grandma. Miss Denise opened the event. She told her story about how 30 years of service had nearly been erased in one day. About how racism doesn't always shout. It whispers, it excludes, it reviews your performance. Then came Tasha. Then came a Muslim woman who was pulled off 3 jet sky flights for random checks. A black pilot who had never been assigned a flagship route despite 15 years of spotless service. The stories kept coming. The live stream surged past 2 million viewers. But then, right before Jonathan took the stage for his closing statement, an aide rushed up to him, whispering something into his ear. His face went pale. He took the stage anyway. Ladies and gentlemen, he began. I was going to end this evening with a plan, a roadmap, but I've just been handed something that changes everything. He held up a tablet. On the screen, breaking news. Federal whistleblower confirms triad program spans for major airlines and one national rail system. DOJ to launch civil rights investigation. Gasps filled the auditorium. Jonathan took a deep breath. You started this with 2 little girls being told they didn't belong, he said, his voice breaking. But now the world knows who said it. And why. The audience rose to their feet. Applause thundered like justice itself. And just as Ava and Alani stood with their grandma, clapping, Ava whispered, Daddy didn't just protect us. He protected everybody. Jonathan looked out at the crowd. And for the first time since this all began, he smiled. But far away, in a high-rise window cloaked in darkness, a new figure watched the broadcast with narrowed eyes. He turned to his phone, typed 3 words. Phase 3 begins. And hit send. The next morning, the world felt different. Across news channels and social media platforms, words like triad, truth assembly, and systemic travel discrimination trended globally. Activists were calling for nationwide audits. Journalists were calling it the jet sky awakening. For the first time, marginalized voices that had long been dismissed or discredited were being heard, believed, and rallied around. But for Jonathan Green, peace was still just a whisper. Because he knew what was coming next. He'd seen the eyes watching behind the curtain, felt the cold hand trying to pull strings from places even a CEO couldn't reach. The whispers of Phase 3 haunted every corner of his thoughts. He didn't know what it was, but he knew it wasn't going to be subtle. And he was right, because it hit like a thunderclap. At 7:12 a.m., every jet sky flight in the country was grounded. The official message from operations read, network integrity compromised. Possible cybersecurity breach. Flights suspended pending full system review. Jonathan's phone exploded with calls. From engineers. From pilots. From his own board. What's going on? Is this retaliation? Are we under attack? But the scariest call came not from inside the company, but from his mother. Jonathan, her voice trembled. The girls, they're not here. Jonathan froze. What do you mean? They went out with a security escort 30 minutes ago for breakfast. But they didn't come back. I called the driver's phone, no answer. I called backup. They said no one was cleared to take them anywhere this morning. The color drained from Jonathan's face. No. He was already sprinting down the hall toward his car. Stay there, he said. Lock the doors. I'll find them. His mind raced. If this was Phase 3, it wasn't about PR. It wasn't about lawsuits. It was personal. An hour later, Jonathan sat in a secure surveillance office with 3 federal investigators from the newly assigned Civil Rights Task Force. Screens lined the walls, showing camera feeds from every jet sky checkpoint, gate, and vehicle entrance. Reese stood at his side, pale, quiet. An agent brought up a video from a roadside diner in Cobb County. Security escort vehicle 7412, she said, pulled over here at 7:29 a.m. The footage played. A black SUV, parked in a dusty corner. Ava and Alani stepped out with their backpacks. They didn't look scared, just sleepy. Two men got out next, dressed like Jet Sky personnel. Vests, badges, fake ones. They walked the girls inside. The agent froze the feed, zoomed in. Jonathan's breath caught. One of the men, the same man from the hangar, the one who had whispered, "Don't test us." A ghost, untraceable in the system. The agent looked grim. Whoever this is, they've been ahead of us every step. Reese turned to Jonathan. "You said he was military. You sure?" "I'd bet my life on it," Jonathan said. "Then we're not dealing with rogue executives anymore," one agent said. "We're dealing with contracted suppressors. Off-the-books teams hired to protect high-stakes systems from exposure." Jonathan leaned forward. "Find my girls." "We will." But hours passed, and no new footage surfaced. Until, at 3:52 p.m., a new video arrived. No subject, just a link. Jonathan clicked. The screen lit up with a live feed of a small cabin in the woods. Ava and Alani sat at a table, eating cereal and coloring in silence. They looked okay, unharmed. But behind them, a shadow moved. Then a voice came through. "You pushed too far, Jonathan. We don't want to hurt them. But you need to undo what you've done. Say Triad was your program. Take the fall. End the assembly. Or this goes on much longer than you can handle." Then the feed cut out. The room went silent. Denise, who had been standing in the doorway, burst into tears. Jonathan sat down heavily, face in his hands. They hadn't just kidnapped his daughters. They'd weaponized truth itself, turned it into a hostage. Reese put a hand on his shoulder. "We'll find them." Jonathan's voice was barely above a whisper. "They think I'll trade the truth for my girls." Reese met his eyes. "Wouldn't you?" Jonathan didn't answer. Because deep down he didn't know. Could he give up the movement, everything they'd fought for, just to bring them home? Or was there another way? His phone buzzed. This time, it was Denise. She was staring at a computer screen. "John," she said. "I know that cabin." "What?" "It's old. Company-owned. Part of a staff retreat site we used to send trainers to. They closed it 10 years ago, but it was never removed from the maps." "Where is it?" "Blue Ridge Mountains." Georgia sighed. Jonathan was already moving. Reese caught up. "Wait, Jonathan, this could be a trap." "I don't care. You need a plan." Jonathan stopped. "Fine. Then help me make one." That night, under cover of darkness, Jonathan, Reese, and two federal agents descended on the cabin site. Guns ready, cameras rolling, drones circling overhead. They had one shot. The operation went fast. Silent entry. One agent flanked the front door. Another covered the back. Jonathan moved like a man possessed, heart in his throat. Then, movement. Inside the cabin, he saw Ava's hair bounce as she stood up from the table. Alani followed, stretching her arms. The two fake Jet Sky men were in the kitchen, talking, unaware, until the door burst open. Federal agents. Hands up. Chaos. One man lunged for a drawer. An agent tackled him. The second man froze. Hands up. Jonathan rushed in, grabbing his daughters, pulling them into his arms. They cried out together. "Daddy." He held them tight, heart pounding harder than it ever had. "They're okay," he whispered over and over. "You're okay." The agents cuffed the men, called in transport. The threat was over. For now. Hours later, back in Atlanta, Jonathan stood before a new kind of assembly. Not cameras, not press, but children. 100 of them. From families who had written letters after the live stream. Children who said, "I didn't know CEOs looked like me." Children who said, "I want to fly one day." Children who saw themselves in Ava and Alani. Jonathan didn't give a speech that day. He just listened. And as he looked at Ava and Alani sitting among the crowd, holding hands again like always, he knew something powerful. They tried to break us by taking the truth. But what they didn't understand was that truth, once spoken, becomes something you can't ever steal again. And somewhere far away, as two arrested men were loaded into a federal transport vehicle, a third man watched the footage silently. He closed his laptop, turned to his phone, typed, "Phase 3 failed. Prepare Phase 4. Because even when you win, there's always someone still willing to silence the truth. Unless someone finally stops them. For good." 6 months later, the sun rose slowly over Washington, D.C., warm light glinting off the white marble steps of the Capitol building. Crowds were already forming, hundreds at first, then thousands. Parents holding their children's hands. Flight attendants in uniform. Pilots. Activists. Teachers. People who once whispered, now shouting. At the center of it all stood a temporary stage. No branding. No corporate logos. Just a single phrase across the backdrop in bold letters. We belong here. Jonathan Green stood backstage, suit crisp, but heart pounding. He had spoken to boards, investors, senators, but today was different. Today was not about corporations. It was about a reckoning. The Truth Assembly had become a movement. What started with two black girls being told to get lost had triggered a federal investigation, exposed a corporate conspiracy, and inspired similar testimonies across industries, rail lines, cruise companies, even national education boards. And now, Jonathan was about to testify before Congress. Not behind closed doors, but in public. 30 minutes, Reese said quietly, handing him a folder. Inside, his final statement. Ava and Alani were sitting in the front row beside their grandma, wearing matching dresses and small pins that read, "We belong." Their faces lit up when Jonathan walked out into view. Applause followed him like a wave. But Jonathan didn't smile. Not yet. He reached the podium, adjusted the mic, and let the silence settle before speaking. When I was a boy, he began, my mother told me something I didn't understand until I became a father. She said, the world doesn't hate you because of who you are. It fears you because of what you might become. He paused. When my daughters were told to get lost, it wasn't just two little girls being dismissed. It was history repeating itself, quiet racism disguised as company policy, corporate culture built to exclude, then deny. The crowd was silent now. My family could have walked away. We could have swallowed the shame, told our daughters to let it go. That's what systems like Triad were designed for. Silence, exhaustion, defeat. He looked straight into the cameras. But we didn't, and we won't. He pulled the flash drive from his jacket pocket, the original one. This is what they wanted to bury. This, he said, holding it up, is why they grounded planes, ruined careers, staged kidnappings, and tried to ruin my family. Because they knew, the moment people believed the truth, the lie would collapse. Applause thundered. He set the drive on the table before him. The lie has collapsed, and we're still standing. He took a final breath. Today, I'm announcing the launch of the Flight for All Foundation, a nonprofit committed to dismantling travel discrimination across all industries. With oversight, with legislation, and with your voices. He stepped back from the mic. And for the first time in months, he smiled. Not with victory, but with peace. Because the fight was no longer his alone. It belonged to all of them. After the event, Jonathan walked to the lawn where Ava and Alani were spinning in circles, laughing as bubbles floated through the air. Denise sat on a bench nearby, eyes closed, basking in the sunlight. Reese joined him, holding a small folder. The last arrest came through this morning, he said quietly. The man from the hangar. His name was Jack Brewer, ex-private security. He flipped. Jonathan raised an eyebrow. Flipped. Said he wasn't working for money. Said he thought he was preserving order. Said he now realizes what he was preserving was white comfort. Jonathan exhaled slowly. They all thought the system would protect them, he said. But it only ever protected the lie. Reese nodded. What now? Jonathan looked at his daughters. Then back at the Capitol behind them. Now we build something new. 3 months later, JetSky International became the first airline in the world to require anti-bias certification for all staff, contractors, and third-party partners. By year's end, 5 more airlines joined them. In Georgia, a school added a new case study to its civics curriculum, the Truth Assembly of 2025. And in a quiet park on the outskirts of Atlanta, a small plaque was placed beneath an oak tree where children often played, in honor of Ava and Alani Green, who were told to get lost, but instead found the way forward for all of us. 1 year later, it was a new day. Jonathan stood at the gate of a new airline lounge, not JetSky this time, but the first fully black-owned private travel company, launched by former JetSky employees, funded by communities, and called Lyft. He stood in line just like everyone else, holding Ava and Alani's hands. A young white gate agent looked up, smiled, and said, "Name?" Jonathan grinned. "Green. Party of 3. She typed, then her eyes widened. "Wait, are you the Green?" He chuckled. "I used to be. Now I'm just Dad." She smiled and waved them through. "No lines today," she said. Welcome aboard. Ava looked up at him as they walked through the gate. Are we really flying again, Daddy? Jonathan nodded. Yes, baby. And this time, no one's going to tell you to get lost. He squeezed their hands. And together, they took flight.